For you people seeing this on video who continue to say that you enjoy it but you feel confused, let me remind you, no matter what it sounds like, as though I'm talking about, it's all about the mind. And now the mind news. Laying beside a building, a man found a note that said, "Inside is open and profitable, outside confining and costly." And as had been the case all of his life thus far, he wasn't sure where he was or in what direction he should go. Students of super-architecture know that they are their own building and that notes and directions mean nothing once you're stably oriented. There was once a man who decided that the weather was the problem. Then, after much pondering of the situation, concluded that the weather then must also be the solution. And after making efforts he believed pertinent to such a conclusion, he could not discover how to use the weather as a solution to the weather as the problem. So, he pondered on up the road further and eventually adopted the position that if the weather is the problem, but turns out not to apparently be the solution, then at least it must be the path to the solution. And upon ultimately finding this usable, he realized that it applied to everything, everywhere. Dice may have 6 sides, but they're still either right or left-handed. A sign by the road out past the normal outskirts of life announced, "If you're not sure where you are and don't mind, welcome. You may be a mystic in transition." And one man left his dictionary out in the rain, and the words debt and death ran together. There was once a man in a trap. He read about people escaping from such traps. He thought about it and believed that he too could escape. He tried. Then he tried some more, and some more, and some more, but escape he did not. Then one day he saw another man reading the same book he had regarding escape, and he asked the man's opinion of what it said. And the man replied that he didn't feel right in responding to such an inquiry, and that he was the author of the book, which caused the first man to ask why someone who had written a work would then go back and pursue his own ideas, plus the fact that the book implied that the author had himself already escaped from the trap. Well, the author patiently heard the man out and nodded as if to say that he fully understood the man's puzzlement, then responded to all of his questions and confusion with these words: "You can escape from a box to find yourself in a cell. You can escape from a cell to find yourself in a prison. You can escape from a prison to find yourself in a village. You can escape from a village to find yourself in a kingdom. You can escape from a kingdom only to find yourself on a continent, on a planet, in a galaxy, and the man in the trap suddenly got it." What should be an alert man's final word on the subject of home construction. The more you think, the more you build a think world. The more you think, the more you build a feeling world. A man who catches on to what's going on around these parts will soon be in the market for some dynamite and blasting caps. There was a man who could make up really neat and nifty stuff, and who would write down for others to read and think about. And he reached a point of so impressing himself even that he started typing out all of his original neat and nifty ideas while sitting in total darkness. And he did not know the touch typing system, and so could not really be sure what he was a-writing when he was a-writing. Turns out, friends and neighbors, that his output remained original even under these impossible conditions, and he lost but a small portion of readers who had previously found his work enjoyable. This man, my friends, this man and his tapping in the dark are you and your thoughts. But you'd already caught on, right? Just, I guess, to torment himself even worser, one guy asked himself, which is worse, to not know what to do or to know what to do and not be able to do it? And indeed, he was somehow momentarily pleased to find he felt even worser, just for a moment. Remember this. Over the course of your full lifetime, it will not cost you 1 cent more to be miserable or stupid. Think about that. Not even a single cent more. Well, it's amazing what modern science can do. And one man huffed, I'm glad I didn't live in the 1700s. Why, he was asked. Because I know what comes afterwards. There was once a couple of greengrocers who did business under the name of cause and effect, but were forced out by the exorbitant protection racket rates being charged by the Hole in Your History gang. Yes, you too can feel worster. A man was sitting in his sunroom, reading a magazine, and periodically talking to his dog when the following scene took place. He looked up from the pages and said to the dog, "It says here that one man said he sometimes wishes that he'd be told that he had an incurable disease that will eventually cause his death, for then he might be able to finally turn loose and begin to truly live." The idea is not without intrigue in some strange way, wouldn't you say, Emerson? And the dog mused. But such a thing is already extant in all men's lives. But rather than it being called an incurable disease, you guys think of it as your mind. And the man suddenly bent down close and curious to the canine. Did you just say something? Such a pleasant day. The warmth of the sunroom, the stimulation of the reading, the companionship of a good, quiet friend. The dog's you nanny, not the mind. In a faraway galaxy was once a planet on which were creatures who believed that their feet could operate in ways not in their own best self-interest. Jeez, what a bunch of idiots. There was once a man who dearly longed for that much lauded state of extraordinary, enlightened consciousness, but who couldn't even get over being distractingly annoyed over the sound of a radio that played permanently in the next room. If it ain't going to be one thing, it's going to be something else. And you can go to the bank with that. A poem. There was once a crow who swallowed a pot of glue, and after doing this, didn't know what to do. Because now he couldn't talk or get free of the glue. Oh, he still talked to himself, but now he couldn't ignore it when he wanted to. And a serious-looking gentleman writes to the poetry overseer demanding to know when more stringent lines will be drawn and enforced determining just what is and what is not true poetry. But in their haste to fill out their uniforms properly, the postal authorities, along with the local bomb squad, exploded the gentleman's letter out in the parking lot behind the main building. And so the overseer never got to see it over. Yeah. And I guess the guidelines for qualifying legitimate poetry from the spurious remains cloudy. So, there was once a crow who swallowed a pot of glue. There was once a man who took serious-sounding matters to be serious in fact. This man was seriously mistaken. But that's how it goes if you take anything to be anything else in particular. One man's personal motto is, I may well be an idiot, but at least I've forgotten about it. One man found himself surrounded by people who were always asking themselves and each other, can worrisome thoughts make you physically ill? Day after day, week after week, hour after hour, minute by minute, they keep asking, can worrisome thoughts make you physically ill? Until, by God, he had enough of it. By God. Well, no need to keep hanging around. That's the end of the story. Wait. Hold up a sec. You don't look so good. Anytime you feel tempted to write your biography or to tell what you may or may not do, remember this. Life thinks just as highly of everyone else as it does you. One man said, I'm one of a kind. And the next man said, we're all one of a kind. And the man after him said, we're all none of a kind, save he not talking, who turns out to be life itself. You can think highly of yourself, or you can think lowly of yourself. But if you think of yourself, you're a fool and half of what a man could be. And one man's bicep suddenly said, may I be allowed to say something about all of this? That won't be necessary, old chum. I think they've got it. There was once this really big guy, and the smaller guys started calling him God, but which wasn't his real name. And it turns out that they didn't do this based on his size alone. They also labeled him God because of the fact that he had at one time swallowed all of them, and they had become lodged in his brain. Hey, how else could you think about a situation like that? Or what else? Call a cat like that. Legend tells of a race of creatures once present on earth who undertook to swallow themselves, more completely I should add, having realized that they had already had themselves in their mouths, and after giving it the best gulp then possible, had become lodged in their own minds, and now wished to push on past the point whereat God got stuck. And all the children saying, everybody's stuck, everybody's stuck. There ain't no way to move life out of town. Thank you, children. The prison system on one planet is such that prisoners are allowed in their cells to have either tapes to listen to or else have the equipment with which to make their own tapes. They are also permitted to either enjoy their stay or not. And furthermore, prisoners are given the freedom to either escape or not. Some prison, huh? Back here on earth. There was once a man who'd been blind since birth, until one day somebody told him to open his eyes and bingo, he could see. I say, what's that crowned in your ear? What? Huh? Okay, we get it, we get it. Some prison, huh? The naturally produced mind can damn near make a potentially alert man so continually distracted and hypnotized as to cause him to despair of ever achieving his goal. And yet, And yet, without the damn thing, he had never even thought of the goal to begin with. So what are you going to do? I said, what are you going to do? From his supine position on the pavement, the man looked up and said to the attending traffic cop, I'm not sure of the make, and I couldn't see its license plate, but I can tell you this. The thing that hit me was absolutely covered in modifiers of all kinds. The patrolman then said to his partner, still seated in the squad car, write all that down carefully, then run over him. But be sure to leave no rhetorical tracks or linguistic prints. And his cohort cranked up the big cruiser and chuckled, ain't you always Mr. Meticulous? And the light on the corner flashed out our moral. You never know where you're going till you get there. Hey, what are you going to do? After touring a factory where mystics were assembled, one man snorted to himself, huh, it's easy not to care when you're not going anywhere. Plus, he is expecting samples. One man started out thinking, wrong inflection. One man started out thinking, if I could get my hands on it, I could turn it off. And after many futile years so attempting, began to believe that there had to be some secret trick that would permit a man to get his hands on it. So then, for quite a while, he thought, if I can just find the trick to it, I can get my hands on it and turn the damn thing off. And for a considerable time, he sought for such a trick, but with no success. So, he returned to the beginning of his efforts and re-examined his initial premise that if he could get his hands on it, he could turn it off, and started to roll around in his mind the possibility that it was not possible under any circumstances to ever turn the thing actually off. And as troublesome as this potential struck him initially, he was forced to face the fact that it could not be ignored. When everybody strikes out on vacation, they expect to go someplace pleasant and refreshing and have their own personal ideas as to how to get there. There is, however, one particular sojourn regarding which their normal approach is ill-founded and ultimately impertinent. Count on it. One man would fuss and cuss his bags of garbage for tipping over and busting open and stuff. But to themselves, the bags just thought, your anger and threats don't impress me. What worse are you going to do to me than what's already on the agenda? And the man was really glad that he couldn't read garbage bags' thoughts. Everywhere he'd look, one man would direct the inquiry, so what's the point? What's the point? A father so said to his child, you can either write books or read books. You can either think thoughts or listen to thoughts others have thought. And lastly, but by no means of any importance whatsoever, is the fact that a man has no choices in life, and while some agree with this and some do not, you must decide as soon as possible with which side you will align yourself. Yeah. And the child was so swept away by the cosmic magnitude and intellectual profundity of what his father had said that he immediately asked if he could transfer to some other family. Regarding the lack of contemporaneousness in certain of human affairs, all complaints not concerning physical discomfort are references to the past. Related notation be assured, voices of choice, not of life or death, are always from the mind. Potential conclusion, not unwarranted, to be drawn. There is no such thing as a present mind. And thus, that which normally passes itself off as such has not as a proper function the exercise of meaningful preferences. What should be an alert man's final word on the subject of time? A man with time on his mind has trouble on his hands. Take your choice. Two ways you can always determine for certain that you are still asleep, captive, and in the dark is by the fact that you are either thinking something that you've thought before, or you're thinking about something that you've heard other people talking about. One man owned a racehorse and a jockey. The horse hadn't a care in the world, but the jockey was always worried about something. The owner liked the horse more than he did the jockey and began plotting to ditch the rider and keep only the steed. He's still plotting. Another scene, not unlike scenes that we have seen before, and perhaps will see again and again, if not certain things which are plain and obvious are not finally accepted and digested. That's the headline. The speaker spoke. Only ignorant men tell one another how they should live. And from the crowd a voice asked, "Is that unconditional?" "Truly so," the speaker replied. And the questionnaire questioned onward. "That is difficult for me to accept. For if wise and reasonable men did not advise one another as to the most suitable conducting of their affairs, how would any of us know how to properly live out our lives?" And the speaker replied, "Only ignorant men will listen to someone else tell them how they should live. Only ignorant men need such advice, and only equally ignorant men will give it. I do not see why this is so hard to grasp. I understand why you do not have the natural immediate desire to grasp it, but that should not stop you, after a bit of reflection on the matter, from seeing quite unambiguously the simple fact to which I point. Only ignorant men give and accept directions on how they should live their lives. That is all I came to say. I have said it, and I am finished." And with that, the speaker disappeared. But the crowd seemed to want to linger and faded in and out of existence, as a voice here and there would periodically appear, trying again to debate the matter that the speaker had already concluded. "Quick, don't move." After many years of struggle, one man finally obtained the position he had so dreamed of, conductor of his own symphony orchestra. But upon taking charge and mounting the podium before them, instead of wielding a baton, he waved at them a loaded .38. This concludes tonight's report from our urology department. If you believe that something is holding you back, you're normal. If you believe that you know what it is, and it is outside of you, you're still normal. But I feel obliged to point out that feeling held back is how you'll remain. Some men think themselves sharp by saying that we are prisoners of our bodies, while others see themselves as clever by claiming that we are prisoners of our minds. But the ones among us, truly insightful and thus free, are those with no opinion or comment on the matter. Barbed wire and neural connections are not the only things that keep a man confined, but they're the only ones needed to get the job done on this little planet. Now, son, how many times do I have to tell you not to touch that thing? And for your information, the conversation had nothing to do with matters sexual. Thank you. Another projection. Thinking about it's fun. Talking about it's fun. Then thinking and talking about it becomes less fun. Then thinking and talking about it becomes a whole lot less fun until the time finally comes when, well, you know what after that. A blind man can enjoy himself as long as he keeps his eyes closed. And a house with a short in the wiring system will not burn down as long as someone, preferably you, is watching and worrying about it. Gee, ain't it fun? There is a certain illness, the attempted treatment of which causes it to linger. What other health information does a real man need? Question: what is the difference between a real man and an ordinary man? Answer is, an ordinary man will claim to be a real man, whereas a true real one will say nothing on the subject. There is a certain illness, the attempted treatment of which causes it to linger. Legend tells of a past mystical order who followed certain mental dietary laws. They considered it kosher to think any thoughts other than any about yourself. You know, had they been able to survive, they had right there the basis for a new religion, in that they could have promoted the notion of faith inasmuch as if someone just blindly followed the noted dictum, they would inevitably and mechanically eventually undergo a transformation. Thus, they could have been the world's only religion that could have offered a money-back guarantee. You can be slated for execution, but if you keep yourself in a mild, dreamlike state, you can survive. If you call that surviving. Regal termination reminder. The king will do everybody in, but himself. And don't you forget who the regal is. Question: what do mystics and everybody else do when they get to a place where they don't know what they're talking about? They start talking about the theories, history, and exemplary lives of others who've been involved in the area of their discussion. One advantage to binary intelligence is that it can never be misled. Never affected at all, for that matter.
No.
The chase, how it goes. If you've got a piece of it for sure, you're sure to get the rest. Chase, catch, chew, swallow. Chase, catch, chew, swallow. That's how it goes until chase and swallow catch up to one another and become suddenly one. Just as with the tax code, there are long-form mystics and there are short-form ones. Either will get the same job done. It's simply a matter of your present personal circumstances, or, when you get more familiar with the affair, a matter of present personal preference. All-important footnote: there are no mystics other than yourself. The ones you think you see are just blank forms that you must fill out. And a man in line says, He was left-handed. Now I begin to get it. And just how long have you been beginning to get it, sir? Oh, says the man, I guess about 10 or 15 years now. I don't mean to give anyone the blues, but even tax offices keep business hours and close sometimes. So I suggest the thing to do is to be trying to fill out your form even before you get to the head of the line. What else you got to do while you're waiting? Upon entering an elevator and hearing the operator say, "Please step to the center of the car," a man suddenly experienced an extraordinary state of awareness. It was only later that day that he realized he had applied the words to his own internal position. Railings around the edges on the tops of tall buildings are not the only things that it is dangerous to stand too close to. Consider, in what area of your head do thoughts seem to most congregate? Step to the center of the car. What should be an alert man's final word on the matter of lying? If you talk, you lie. Yeah, I know you guys ain't children anymore. Okay. Ignore what I just said about lying. So you guys are far enough along to know that it's meaningless. But hey, it's not. I'm not always sure who's listening into all of this. So we try to have a little something for everybody, if you know what I mean. And don't forget that I'm bullshitting you. So again, I've proved my case. If you talk, you lie. Case closed. Thank you, Your Honor. One man told himself, based on what you know and what you've experienced, you should be ashamed to not be any more awake than you are. I am, he replied, but apparently not sufficiently so. A man had a parrot and a voice that talked. And the man for a long time believed that the voice was coming from the parrot. And damn, you should have been there the day he realized that it wasn't. No. One man started out wanting to be smarter than everybody else. Then after many years struggling toward this end, he changed the goal. He now wants to be smarter than he is. Oh, one man said, okay, let me get this straight. First we don't try, then we try, and then we don't try again? Man's going to overheat eventually. Upon reading a statement that said, stillness is the mind's natural state, one man immediately exploded, splattering himself all over the book, which of course made the book regret that it had even mentioned it in the first place. And finally, one man says he wouldn't mind the weather as much if it wasn't so doggone noisy. Yeah.